What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. We're joined by a special guest on tonight's episode of JT Sports After Dark. We got Juan Gotti talking sports. What's going on, man?
What's going on, JT, man? I appreciate you having me on today, or tonight, rather. JT After the Dark. That's new. I never heard of that before, so that made it even more special, man. I appreciate you having me on this very special episode, and let's talk about whatever you have in store for us. I'm very excited. Thank you again.
We appreciate you for taking time out your night to have some fun with us and talk Commanders football, man. We're going to be doing this a lot more often. We're going to have you on again shortly this offseason. You know, training camp is just around the corner. And I know you're dying to see some Commanders football, man. Like, how excited are you to watch the Washington Commanders this year?
Yeah, man, I'm definitely excited to watch my Washington Commanders this year. Every year I am, but this year is definitely different for a lot of reasons. I can't wait. I really can't, because I'm dying to obviously see Sam Howell. Do we finally have a franchise quarterback who we haven't had since Kirk Cousins? Many failed experiments with Alex Smith, unfortunate situations if you want to start there. And now the last one with Carson Wentz, man. Eric Bieniemy, as a lot of people around the league are very, very excited about. And then obviously the biggest one of them all, Daniel Snyder is no longer the owner of this team, which I can tell y'all now, everyone around this area is super excited about it. So, man, I'm very excited for this season for a lot of reasons. I cannot wait to get this thing started.
And once again, you guys make sure to check out my guy, Juan Gotti Talking Sports, man, talking Washington Commanders football every day. Let the people know what you got planned for the channel over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, man. So as you heard JT, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at Juan Gotti Talking Sports, where I talk about the Washington Commanders and the NFL. This year, I'm taking it to a whole new level with covering.
All right, man. So before we get into it, we got to see how we can get my guy Juan Gotti's audio going here. All right, man. So here we go. All right, so you guys let us know if you guys can hear my dude Juan Gotti again. Juan Gotti, give us a little bit of a test real quick. Let the people know where they can find you at one last time.
Yeah, man, it's your boy Juan Gotti here. You can find me on all social media platforms at Juan Gotti Talking Sports, covering the Washington Commanders and the NFL all year round.
All right, man. So the first thing we got to talk about now that we got the audio finally situated is this, man. So the Washington Commanders, you feel, could actually be able to win double-digit games for the first time in a very long time. And with them winning 10 games or more, are they going to be able to get into the playoffs this year?
Honestly, I think so. I really do, because as we know, the conference as a whole has definitely got weaker with all the QB talent going pretty much to the AFC. Jalen Hurts is arguably the best quarterback in this conference. And after him, I don't know who you put. Matthew Stafford maybe, or I think even Jared Goff may be in that conversation. More of the story, I definitely think Washington has an opportunity in front of them where they could make the playoffs. Now, are they going to win the division? I'm not sure, but getting one of those wild card spots are definitely in play for Washington, and I definitely really don't see a reason why we can't qualify for that. Again, the conference as a whole has really got weaker from the most important position on the field, that's quarterback. Again, I think Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott are the cream of the crop when it comes to that top of the quarterback chain there in the NFC, and Kirk Cousins and stuff like that. So I definitely think Washington has a very, very solid and great chance to make the playoffs. Again, not necessarily win a division, but just punching their ticket into the postseason. And coming from a Washington fan, that's all I can ask.
What about the Washington Commanders has you believing that this team is going to be able to make it to the postseason in 2023?
Oh man, there's a multitude of reasons why I feel like Washington can make it to the postseason this season. Should we start with the most obvious one that has nothing to do with the on-field directly, and that is the selling of the team? Daniel Snyder is no longer the owner of the Washington Commanders, and as a diehard fan, this is the most exciting news because, bro, I didn't think he would ever sell the team in my lifetime. I thought he was going to always be it, at least in my lifetime. So to see him finally selling the team is a huge relief. He was such a toxic person on and off the field, a controlling owner, and just kind of just put this dark spell on a once proud franchise. This is a franchise that once was at the top of the league in the upper echelon. Like plenty teams back then, they modeled their team after the Washington then Redskins. And then once Dan Snyder took over, all that went downhill. So starting right there, that in itself gives me a huge reason of belief that we can make some noise this season. Then you go to the actual on-field talent. I feel like Washington honestly has one of the best complete rosters in the NFL. Now, obviously, the quarterback position in itself, which is the biggest position, is still a question mark there. But if you try to take that out and look at the rest of the roster in its whole, I think Washington has one of the most complete rosters in the NFL. I mean, from the running back room with Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson and the drafting of Chris Rodriguez Jr. to the wide receiving core, who I think is one of the best wide receiving cores in football, led by Terry McLaurin, who's coming off a Pro Bowl season, second year in Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel obviously still being that versatile piece there. And you still got De'Ami Brown, who is a guy that has a lot of potential and has a lot of experience with our new quarterback in Sam Howell, as they went to University of North Carolina together and made some noise there. Then you go to the tight end room. The tight end room features Logan Thomas, a veteran who had a really good year in 2020, and then he got hit with a ton of injuries, but now he's back healthy, and I think he can be a solid piece. But what makes me even more excited about the tight end room is the young guys that we have behind him. Cole Turner going into his second year, and then you got Curtis Hodges. We did lose Amani Rogers in minicamp earlier this offseason for the rest of the year, but that has a lot of opportunity for down the line in the future. He can sit down and get healthy while we still get some valuable play from our young guys, such as Cole Turner and Curtis Hodges and even John Bates. But Logan Thomas very clearly is still the number one tight end on this roster, and I think he can be that real good red zone threat that we need. And then you go to the offensive line, which was terrible last year. It's definitely much, much better. We went out and signed Andrew Wiley from Kansas City. We got Nick Gates, and we also have some young guys that we drafted in the season prior. You got Chris Paul, who was competing for the left guard position with Sadiq Charles, who they are taking a strong liking to. You got Sam Cosmi, who was originally drafted as a tackle, but now is making that start at right guard for us. And at left tackle, you still got the veteran in Charles Leno, who isn't the best, but he is average. He's okay. So the offensive line has vastly improved. And then you flip gears to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, must I talk much about the defensive line, JT? You know how good that defensive line is, led by Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, who just got his bag this year. You still got Montez Sweat, and you got a healthy Chase Young finally coming back, and the depth behind it, and KJ Henry and James Smith-Williams and Casey Toohill and F.A. Obata. We are deep at that position. And then you go to the secondary. The linebacker room, I like Jamin Davis. He's still a young guy that's learning. If there is a weakness on our team, it probably would be that linebacker room, but it's still solid. You got Cody Barton, who you signed. But the secondary is what really amazes me, man. You go out and you get Emmanuel Forbes in the first round, a guy that had 13 career interceptions at Mississippi State, and 6 of them things returned to the house. Ball hawk, to say the least. Then you still got Benjamin St. Juice, who I think can be one of the best cornerbacks in football if he can stay healthy. And you still got the savvy veteran who is still pretty young, too. He's only 27 years old, but he's a Super Bowl champion, and Kendall Fuller. So you got that veteran guy at the cornerback position. And then you go to the safeties, man. Cameron Curl, to me, is one of the best safeties in football. The only thing that he struggles with is turnovers. He hasn't been able to cash in with turnovers, but when you look at the complete package, Cam Curl is the guy that you want to be in that secondary and the last line of defense. And he's going to get paid, I would say, next offseason. Derek Forrest is a guy that emerged last season who was really good for us last season, and I think can take another leap next season coming up. And then you got Percy Butler, who you just drafted in the second round, and Jeremy Reeves and Percy Butler. Man, I just gave you our whole roster breakdown, man. I'm telling y'all, our team is complete, and that's the reason. That's really the big reason why I feel like we can be good this year. And obviously, Eric Bieniemy being the new offensive coordinator. But again, the main point that I want to drive home is that our roster is just complete. We really don't have no weaknesses. Just the question mark of can Sam Howell be that guy? So that's really my reasonings behind why I feel like we can be so successful this year. It's just mainly because we have a complete roster.
Now let's segue to this, right? Mm-hmm. If the Washington Commanders are going to make it to the playoffs like me and you expect, Sam Howell is going to have a breakout year. Why are you so high on Sam Howell, and why you're confident he's going to break out in 2023?
Man, the reason why I'm so high on Sam Howell is for a lot of reasons. One, he had started at UNC as a true freshman. Headed into his final year there at Chapel Hill, he was on the Heisman watch list. Unfortunately, the season didn't plan out the way it did. He wanted it to for him because pretty much he had to carry the team. He lost all of his offensive firepower the year prior to the draft with De'Ami Brown coming to Washington and Daz Newsome and the running backs there getting drafted. He lost a lot of offensive firepower, so it was a lot put on his shoulders, and he tried his best. But after his final year there in Chapel Hill, he went in the draft and he slipped to the 5th round. A lot of people believe if Sam Howell would have came out the year prior, he was eligible, he would have been a 1st round pick. You hear his head coach there at North Carolina talk about him. It's going to be a 30 for 30 on Sam Howell one day of how good he is. And that's coming from your college coach. Man, he has all the attributes. The only thing that you could say about Sam Howell that he really can't control is his height. He's not the tallest quarterback, but he has every attribute that you look for. Strong arm, accuracy like no other. He has the athleticism to escape the pocket, extend plays, and he has the body build to take hits. So that's really the only thing that you can say about him. And just mentally and just how he is as a person, you can just tell he gets it. He's not a cocky guy. He's a quiet, humble guy, but he knows how to lead a group of men. And you hear his teammates, he hasn't even played a full season yet, but you hear his teammates talk so well about him, like a Terry McLaurin, like a Jahan Dawson. They talk so well about how Sam Howell is able to just lead a group of men and just the way he prepares and the way he is on the field. Eric Bieniemy said it best. The best thing he loves about Sam Howell is that he's auto-corrects himself. Sam Howell does not make the same mistake twice. And although he only has one NFL game under his belt, it definitely is a breath of fresh air and something that we haven't seen here in Washington. Like, honestly, JT, man, he just gets it. He's one of those guys that just gets it mentally and physically, and it's really nothing that you can say. You just have to wait and see, man. And I just feel so confident in Sam Howell, and I haven't felt this way since, honestly, Kirk Cousins, man.
So how big of an impact is a guy like Eric Bieniemy going to have on Sam Howell taking that next step? Because the large reason why I believe the Commanders are going to be a playoff team and why I have so much confidence in Sam Howell is the hiring of Eric Bieniemy. And I think that Eric Bieniemy is a really good offensive mind. A lot of people in the national media will sit on the high chair and vouch for this man to be a head coach. And if this offense is going to be good, it's going to come down to how Sam Howell performs. And you look at what Eric Bieniemy did with the Kansas City Chiefs during his time there. Obviously, we don't know how big of an influence he had on Kansas City's success. We just know that he played a part in that success, which a lot of people around that organization would tell you that. So when it comes to Eric Bieniemy, what have you been hearing about him and Sam Howell's relationship so far, and what impact do you think he's going to have on Sam Howell's development?
Yeah, man. Eric Bieniemy is going to be a positive impact on this team. I mean, he's already made a huge impact, and we haven't even snapped the ball yet. Eric Bieniemy is that guy that every team wants, and a lot of people want to talk about him not calling the plays. That's the reason why he's not a head coach in this league. Man, he has got so much credit from Andy Reid there in Kansas City for their success, especially this past season and in the Super Bowl. But another thing, you want to talk about not calling plays. The same guy that was under that in that system, Matt Nagy, was in the same situation as Eric Bieniemy. Did not call plays or anything like that, and he still was able to get a head coaching job. So that to me is BS. It's some reason out there why they don't want to give Eric Bieniemy a chance. But I'm hoping when he comes to Washington, he could change that and get the head coaching job that he so rightfully deserves. When you look at Eric Bieniemy, he's the full package. He's everything you want in a coach. He's a guy that's going to coach you hard. He's a guy that's going to lead you to success and tell you what it is. He's going to be upfront about it. Yes, he's going to be hard on you, but that's because he expects and he knows you can do it. This is a two-time winning offensive coordinator. You hear Patrick Mahomes talk so good about him. You hear about Adrian Peterson and Maurice Jones-Drew. That's the reason why he went to the college that EB was at, because of him. And Eric Bieniemy has an opportunity to finally shush the critics, or quiet the critics rather, because there are a lot of people that genuinely don't believe in Eric Bieniemy. But I'll tell you this: if Eric Bieniemy could find a way to get all he can get out of Sam Howell, then he has no reason not to become a head coach. Because although I speak highly about Sam Howell, and a lot of other people speak highly about Sam Howell in this fan base and around the media, there are a part of this media that thinks Sam Howell is just an ordinary fifth-round pick. They think he's just trash. They don't want to give him an opportunity. They just look at him as if he's another Jag, just the guy in Washington. So if Eric Bieniemy could find a way to get the best out of Sam Howell, they're not only going to look at Sam Howell and say, man, maybe I was wrong. They're going to say, you know what? Eric Bieniemy deserves a head coaching job. I think he's going to be so good for this offense and just this team in general, because one thing about it, he's the assistant head coach too. So he's a guy that has mainly the offense to worry about, but he dabbles in the rest of the team here and there too. So he's going to be able to have an impact on this whole team. I mean, at his introductory press conference, JT, when do you see an offensive coordinator getting an introductory press conference as if he's a head coach? There at the introductory press conference, he had Cameron Curl, defensive members there that don't even get directly impacted by this guy, but they were there to support him because they know how good he can be. He's around winning. Anywhere Eric Bieniemy goes, he wins. Again, two-time offensive coordinator, winning Super Bowl champion, always in the AFC Championship. I don't care if he directly didn't call the plays, but he was in those meetings. He was under Andy Reid, so everything that he's going to have from the success in Kansas City, he's going to bring here in Washington. And honestly, again, I would love that. I love that because that's something that we need. The last offensive coordinator, Scott Turner, was not the best, and he did not do a good job at fulfilling and capitalizing off of the talent that he has. This roster on the offensive side of the ball, like I said, again, is one of the best in the NFL, especially that wide receiving trio. And I think Eric Bieniemy is going to do a dang good job getting all that he can get out of these guys.
And lastly, for Sam Howell, if somebody had to come up to you right now and say, give us a stat prediction for how he's going to look in his breakout season, what would it be? I'll give him like 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He completes somewhere around 63 to 64% of his passes, 3,800 yards. What about you?
Yeah, I'll say around there, because we got to realize Sam Howell's a second-year quarterback, but this is going to be his first-year star. So as much as I want to be biased and be a homer and say, oh, my God, he's going to win the MVP, he's going to go out there and light it up, which I'm praying for, I'm also a realist. So I think Sam Howell is going to probably be around that 20 to 25 range. I'll say 20 passing touchdowns, 5 on the ground for about maybe 10 to 11 interceptions for about, let's just say 3,400 yards in total. A solid year, you know what I'm saying? A way, way better year than we've had from any quarterback in recent memory, and definitely should be the way for the future. He should show these guys and this team that I'm here to stay, and I'm the franchise quarterback for the Washington Commanders. So I'll say somewhere around there.
Everybody, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast. We're not just available on YouTube. You can find us on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you are enjoying this episode of the podcast, make sure that you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be going live around 10 p.m. Eastern time, normally around 2 or 3 times throughout the week. And make sure that you guys check out my guy, Juan Gotti Talking Sports, man. Everything Washington Commanders and more. He's finna start spreading his wings, talking more about the NFL. So make sure that you guys go ahead and check out our guy, Juan Gotti Talking Sports. Now, let's touch on this, man. Odell Beckham Jr., you being a Commanders fan for all these years, you got to watch him during his prime years with the New York Giants. And most people I see on social media call OBJ overrated, and I even seen people go as far to say that he's still living off the hype from his one-handed catch. I know you remember the catch on Sunday Night Football. It's the pass interference call against the Dallas Cowgirls, and he makes the one-handed grab, and it goes viral, and it pretty much has propelled him to a global superstar. He's pretty much the most popular player in NFL history if we're going on social media following. So you being a Commanders fan, getting to see OBJ play against you for several years inside the division, I know you probably still keep up with him a good bit because it's OBJ who isn't. How do you feel about OBJ this year? Like, do you think he's overrated? Do you think he's still got some left in the tank?
Man, first of all, let me say this. Whoever is really calling Odell Beckham overrated, you just don't know football. There's no way Odell Beckham is overrated to you. Has he had a ton of injuries happen to him the past couple years that derailed him from showing that he's still one of the best wide receivers in football? Yes. But when he was on the field, he was still him. Like, he's still a really good wide receiver. And I think he's finally going to be fully healthy this year. Again, he was a vocal reason why the Rams won the Super Bowl. Like, let's not forget. Yes, they had Cooper Kupp that year, and he went crazy, obviously. But Odell Beckham was a huge part of why they won that Super Bowl. He obviously opened the game up versus Cincinnati, scoring a touchdown, but then later, obviously towards ACL. If he doesn't tear his ACL, he probably goes off for 2 to 3 touchdowns that game. And then the following year, he had to sit out due to injury. Does he, what happens that year? I think he goes crazy. Odell Beckham, man, like you mentioned, me being a Washington Commanders fan, I've watched him from his rookie year all the way up until his final year in New York, up close and personal 2 times a year. He dogged us every single time. Odell Beckham is still one of the best wide receivers in football. He's only 30 years old, so right there, that's still entering your prime. And then you go to a team where Lamar Jackson, a reigning MVP. If you ask me, this is probably the best quarterback situation he's been in since his early years in New York, where Eli Manning was still still one of the best quarterbacks in football. Lamar Jackson is an MVP candidate every single year. He started off the season hot last year, and he was probably up there in the MVP conversation if we're being real before he got hurt last season. He's got some weapons now. Not only Odell, you drafted Zay Flowers in this past draft, and then you got obviously Rashad Bateman. You still got Mark Andrews, and you got a way new offensive coordinator from Georgia who I think is going to be really good. Greg Roman, he's not a bad offensive coordinator, but I kind of felt like he was hampering their offense in a sense, because they really had no explosive plays. It was always ground and pound. Let me chew the clock up. Let me not really put the ball in Lamar Jackson's hands and let him throw it around the yard. But granted, I'll say this, Baltimore has failed to put weapons around Lamar Jackson. I've been saying this. Shout out to my guy Engraven. He's a big-time Baltimore Ravens YouTuber. I had him on the channel last year, and I told him, I said, my thing with Baltimore is that y'all are good. Y'all are always going to be a favorite in the AFC to make it to the playoffs and whatnot. But I genuinely feel like y'all have not done enough to help out Lamar Jackson. This is the first year that I genuinely feel like they've put enough talent around Lamar Jackson to really be successful this year. Again, and then you still got the run game that's always going to be good. That's a staple there in Baltimore. And then you got a really good defense. I'm very excited to see what Kyle Hamilton's going to look like in his second year, and Roquan Smith in his first year as a full-time Baltimore Raven. Right, you got a lot of pieces on that defense as well, and I think the Ravens are honestly a favorite to make it far this season. I'm talking AFC Championship contenders this year, because again, Lamar and the Ravens have been able to be successful. They haven't been able to cash in all the way, but they've been able to be successful under really nothing there on offense.
Like, and you look at OBJ. I think he's probably the most talented receiver that the Ravens have had in the last decade, man. You remember when they brought in Steve Smith like years ago when he was on his last leg? So it's like, you watch Odell Beckham play in that Super Bowl. If he would have stayed healthy, he probably win Super Bowl MVP. Let me know if I'm wrong, but even OBJ still feels like he would have won MVP if he would have stayed healthy that whole entire Super Bowl against Cincinnati. I mean, their whole entire offense changed once he went down with that injury. And I'm going to be real with you. Like, I don't know what your reaction was when he went down with that injury with the Rams, but for me and my homies were sitting on the couch and we almost cried. Well, I might have shed a little thug tear or something like that, because I was really hurt to see OBJ put in so much work, get criticized by the media after the falling out with him and the Browns. But it's like, I still think OBJ is one of the most talented receivers in the game. And even if he isn't what he used to be, if you're a defensive coordinator, you still have to account for Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. isn't going to be one of those players that you just say, he got to show us. You feel me? Because if you allow OBJ to show you, he's going to embarrass you. So I think OBJ, for the people that say he's overrated, I think it's more people who have always not really been high on OBJ, with the whole incident that he had with the field goal net with the New York Giants, the fact that he can be a little bit over dramatic at times. But this is just somebody who's really passionate about the game of football. But this is the last thing that I got to talk to you about, and this is going to hit deep. What if RG3 could have stayed healthy, fam?
Man, you really hit a spot with that one, man. If RG3 could have stayed healthy, what would have happened, man? Honestly, if we're talking strictly on-field play, because there were rumors and there were reports that RG3 wasn't the best teammate. He had this arrogance to him.
RG3, the loving guy that we see on ESPN.
Yes, it was reports that he was that kind of teammate, and I think there was actually a public appearance where he kind of basically threw his whole team under the bus and basically didn't take no blame for anything. So it was reports about him doing that. But if we're talking strictly on the field play, RG3 stays healthy, I think Washington would at least have made it to a couple of NFC championships. I don't know if we would have cashed it in and won our fourth Super Bowl, but come on, man. You see that 2012 season, we started off 3-6, finished 10-6. We was up 14-0 on the Seahawks. Should have won that game, but we lost. If he stays healthy, man, I think we have our franchise correct. Now, is he still playing to this day at a high level? I'm not sure, because he was a reckless abandon. He's a guy that clearly, as we know, was a mobile guy, had all the tangibles, man. If we're talking like, I know a lot of people looking back on that draft says Andrew Luck was the best quarterback in that draft, which honestly, you could still make that case and say he was, because like he's the most NFL ready and complete quarterback. But if we're talking like everything in a quarterback, man, from mobile to arm to accuracy, man, RG3 had it all. And as a Washington fan, man, it pains me that he did not pan out. Like, I'm telling you, bro, this area, bro, was so excited for RG3, bro. Like, man, it hurts me that it never panned out the way it should have been. Obviously, A lot off the field happened with the ownership and Dan Snyder and Mike Shanahan really not seeing eye to eye, and Dan Snyder picking RG3 over Mike Shanahan, and then Jay Gruden getting in here and not really liking RG3, so he went with Kirk Cousins. Like a whole lot of stuff went on with that whole debacle with RG3. But if we're talking solely on field play, RG3 would have been one of the best quarterbacks in football. I think he would have won an MVP, man. I genuinely think so. Man, you look at that team that we had in 2012, man, we were solid, right? Alfred Morris, man. That offense was a big reason. Now, does it change when Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan leave? Yes, it does.
Didn't y'all have Sean McVay on your coaching staff too?
We had Sean McVay. I think Sean McVay was, if he wasn't on the coaching staff down during that time, he came later, because we also had Matt LaFleur too. Also had Matt LaFleur on our coaching staff. So it would have changed because Jay Gruden would have came in, would have got his own little situation going on, but Sean McVay was the offensive coordinator at that time. So it would have been fun to see what he was able to do with RG3.
Well, RG3,
and then RG3 would have had Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, because that year, 2016, they were 1,000-yard receivers. Would have had Jordan Reed. Man, I love Kirk Cousins for what he did here in Washington, and I was a part of the fan base that actually wanted him back here in Washington, but we screwed that up. He was good with us, don't get me wrong, but could you imagine with RG3, a healthy RG3 with that offense? That would probably be one of the best offenses in history, man. Let's just keep it a buck. So, long story short, man, if RG3 never got hurt, I think we would have been in a multiple NFC championships. I don't know if we cash it in again, and I think RG3 would have been in the MVP candidate, discussion almost every year of his early on career, and I think he probably would have won one or maybe even two, bro. He was like that, bro, for that year, and it pains me to this day that it didn't pan out the way it should have.
Everybody, we got our guy Juan Gotti talking sports here. Thank you for coming through on this episode of JT Sports After Dark, man. One last time, let the people know where they can find you and what you have planned for the channel coming up.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you for having me on again. It's your boy Juan Gotti Talking Sports. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at Juan Gotti Talking Sports. And like I said, I have the Top of the Morning Show podcast that goes live Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:30 a.m. where we talk all about the NFL. Got a ton of Washington Commander videos dropping every single day, all year long. And training camp is getting ready, so we got a lot of training camp videos coming out. And then once we get to the season, we're covering not just my Washington Commanders, but the whole entire NFL. Again, got schedule predictions coming out, win-loss records, rankings. I got a ton of stuff coming out. So please check me out at Juan Gotti Talking Sports again. I appreciate you, JT, for having me on, man. It was a blessing.
You guys make sure to subscribe to my guy, Juan Gotti Talking Sports. We have his YouTube channel pinned on the top of the comment section in the chat. You guys make sure to go ahead and subscribe to my boy. Check him out. We're going to have him on the podcast way more frequently throughout this season. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of JT Sports After Dark. Make sure that you check out the JT Sports podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. We're not just available on YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports podcast is available. All you got to do is go type in JT Sports on whatever podcasting platform you use, and it should pop up. Or you can go down to the description down below, scroll down a little bit, and you will find the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. And once again, Juan Gotti Talking Sports, we appreciate you for coming on, man.
I appreciate you again, JT, for having me on.